America, a country once dependent on foreign energy, now poised to be one of the world's leading suppliers of natural resources.
We are so accustomed to think of ourselves as running out of oil, and all of a sudden we have at least a 100-year supply of natural gas. Now we're looking at being a net exporter within a decade.
It's a boom that has millions of people across this country talking, and it has some talking about another vital resource.
If they had to do what I do for water, they'd have a whole new thinking about drilling.
This is northeastern Pennsylvania, home to one of the richest gas deposits the world has ever known. The communities here are divided over the water some won't drink since the natural gas industry came to town.
We had perfectly good water before they showed up.
It's a debate that's changed lives and even broken up homes.
She walked out of here on me, left a note on the table.
It's happening against a backdrop of deep economic woes, high unemployment and high oil prices, at a time when we're coming out of one of the worst recessions in American history, with a massive bipartisan push in Washington for American independence and cheaper fuel. Tonight, join us for a personal look inside the lives of 6 ordinary families from small Pennsylvania towns who are now the stars of this nationwide debate. The stories begin in February 2012. We traveled to 2 northeastern Pennsylvania counties and followed the families over the course of 15 months. They've drained their resources, exhausted as they attempt to navigate a new scientific landscape.
Boy, too many papers here.
All to get information about the safety of a resource essential to survive. They'd enter legal battles with corporate giants
against Cabot Oil and Gas Corporation.
Have seemingly endless meetings with state and federal officials.
Here's the color it's supposed to be.
Depend on filtration systems that don't always work, and try to sell their homes when the homes themselves are at risk. They are all drilling for answers.
I don't know what I'm dealing with.
While America's largest industry drills for natural gas.
It's got fishy cold for him.
We first met Max Chilson in February 2012. But about 10 months before that, the 80-year-old was living a very different and simple life.
It's my hunting dog. Come on over here, Max. See? Come on over here so you can get on TV. Come on over here. Look up
A
there.
lifelong resident of a historical community in Bradford County, Pennsylvania.
This is the Hall Valley. This is what you call French Asylum.
Max lives in a home tucked away among winding roads, mountains, and valleys.
Okay, down there, Chief's oil and gas pad.
And he's also surrounded by well pads.
The other pad is just like that, right up there, about 1,800 foot.
He's got one above him and another below, both about 1,500 feet from his home.
This once was my beautiful well. Now, I don't know what you want to call it.
It was nearly a year before we met him, on a late spring evening in 2011, that Max realized his simple life would get a lot more complicated.
I came back from turkey hunting and filled up the washing machine, and I came in, cooked my dinner, and went back out, looked in the washing machine. The washing machine was jet black, all the water.
Max filed a complaint with Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Protection, also known as the DEP, and would spend the next 2 years trying to find the source of his water problem and get it fixed.
Send it to them.
This was all happening as lawmakers, regulators, scientists, and oil and gas representatives started engaging in a fierce national debate over how a drilling practice that happens sometimes miles beneath the surface could impact drinking water wells just a couple hundred feet underground. The gas extraction technique, called hydraulic fracturing and commonly known as fracking, is a process where millions of gallons of sand, water, and chemicals are blasted deep into the earth. This shatters underground shale and frees natural gas for collection. The process has been around for decades, But the newest technology allows for drilling across a wider landscape, reaching depths farther below ground than ever before. Here in the famous Marcellus Shale, a geological formation buried deep under parts of the eastern United States, wells can be drilled as far as 10,000 feet. That's the same length as more than 6 Empire State Buildings stacked from end to end, and it's also as long as 27 football fields combined.
The big difference today is the horizontal piece of it. So now instead of having a bunch of wells on the surface, you can have one that can go 2 miles along a seam or 3 miles along a seam to access all of those resources. So you're using a lot more water, of course, in the process.
It's that water mixed with chemicals, sand, and tiny ceramic pellets that has people like Max concerned. But some industry representatives claim the practice is harmless.
In 60 years of doing this, we have not had an incident of hydraulic fracturing polluting a water supply. It hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened.
About 20,000 new water wells are drilled in Pennsylvania each year. But long before the industry started fracking, many of those wells were failing. Naturally occurring methane has been around since the dinosaurs, and so have the naturally occurring toxins found in old Pennsylvania wells, including heavy metals like arsenic, radionuclides like uranium, volatile organic compounds like benzene, and bacteria that makes its way into shallow drinking water wells as water flows over land. But the catch is that many of the same natural chemicals are also used in fracking fluid, and the gases are found in the shale rock. So are energy companies being unfairly blamed, or has there been an unintended consequence from the use of this advanced drilling technology? We get our first look at Max's water on a cold winter evening in 2012.
I've been trying to get an answer to this black stuff, but I can't get an answer what it is from nobody.
Since his water turned black 9 months ago, he's had multiple tests on his well from 2 different energy companies, state officials, and independent researchers.
I ask them over and over, what could be in the solids? They don't know.
Results from one of his earliest tests, ordered by Chief Oil and Gas, shows high levels of manganese, sodium, strontium, barium, and diesel fuel. They are all substances associated with fracking, and except for the diesel fuel, are all naturally occurring. The same test found so many chloroforms in his water that they deemed it not fit for human consumption.
I almost cried. I really did. I knew that it would never come back, and the longer it goes, I can see it's never going to come back.
He now receives 5-gallon water jugs from the energy company.
They promised to put a filtering system in that would take this black stuff out and discharge it, but that never happened.
And it may never happen. There's now a Pennsylvania law that holds energy companies responsible for pollution of a water supply within 2,500 feet of an unconventional well.
It's an unusual concept. It basically is you're guilty until proven innocent.
Back then, it only protected water supplies up to 1,000 feet away, which means the gas company has no legal obligation to compensate Max for his water problems. So as Max waits for answers, this 80-year-old is back to living the old-fashioned way.
If you have to carry water in the house and heat it on a stove like Grandma did, carry it in your bathtub, and heat all your water on the stove for dishes, well, that sure is called an impact. I wish everybody could get a little taste of that. Really do.
We leave Max's home and drive about 30 minutes west to the Bradford County town of Granville Summit to meet our second homeowner, Sherry Vargason. Sherry and her husband leased their land to Chesapeake Energy, one of the top producers of natural gas in the United States. She says drilling began on her property in 2009, and then something unusual happened.
Instead of turning on the faucet and getting water, you turned on the faucet and got spurts of air with a little trickle of water. And it was forceful enough it could knock a glass right out of your hand.
She says it was right after a maintenance crew had been out on the pad. When we arrive, Sherry draws a glass of water from her faucet, The result? It's like dropping a tablet of Alka-Seltzer into a glass of water. It's cloudy and fizzes as bubbles rise to the top. And what should be cold water doesn't get cold enough.
There's some sort of cocktail in there that my water doesn't freeze.
The chemicals causing that, no one knows.
That is probably still one of the biggest mysteries we're dealing with. Chesapeake and DEP are very concerned with the levels of methane that are in it.
We wanted to find out just how high those methane levels really were, so we had a water geochemist review Sherry's test results. Natalie Cruz says a post-drilling test conducted by the gas company in 2009 didn't reveal anything of concern. But in Sherry's later tests, results change.
You start seeing unusual levels of methane in state agency tests. So the high action level, the immediate hazard level for methane is 28 parts per million. And so she started having tests that were at 50 or 40 in 2011.
Other results from her well, collected by researchers at Duke University, show even higher levels, brushing 70 parts per million in one, and in another more than 100. That's about 3 times higher than what federal officials call an immediate hazard.
Those methane levels are high and are a concern.
In fact, she's got so much methane in her water, it's explosive, forcing Sherry to keep her windows open, even in the dead of winter, to allow the flammable gas to vent. The concern that if not properly vented, Sherry's home could explode. It's what happened to this Cleveland, Ohio couple in 2007 after methane gas escaped from a nearby well and seeped into their aquifer.
So I got out of bed and looked, and I saw all these things happening. The floor parting, the ceiling cracking, the sidewalls cracking, and hearing all this stuff falling,
Ohio's state environmental regulators determined that the casing on the vertically drilled gas well was not properly cemented, which allowed the high-pressure gas to escape and impact the couple's home. It's a common problem that even the industry has acknowledged.
It rarely happens, but it does. And when it does, we have to respond to that by trying to correct it through, some better, whether it's a different type of casing.
Some states like Ohio have addressed the issue with tougher regulations for well construction and thicker casing.
We just don't just put a piece of casing down in a well and through your water table and say that's your only protection. Now we telescope pipes in between that pipes, and in between the pipes we actually cement. So we have a backup.
But in Sherry's case, routine checks didn't protect her water supply from the methane gas she later found out escaped from Chesapeake's improperly cemented gas well. It was resolved as part of an agreement that was also the largest single penalty in the history of Pennsylvania's oil and gas program. Chesapeake was ordered to provide Sherry's family with a drinking water alternative and to routinely screen and sample her water well. They were also told to submit a plan to either restore or replace her water supply, but Sherry refused to allow the company to install a water treatment system because what would come with it is the inability to talk.
Chesapeake says, well, we'll start working on it. And they bring in a work agreement. Well, hidden in that work agreement is usually a non-disclosure agreement, so that the minute you sign that, you cannot tell anybody else that you're having a problem with your water.
Before we leave her that February to meet with families in another county, Sherry is trying to work out another agreement with the company. She has few options and still uses the methane-laden water to bathe.
We've become very adept at taking very brief showers because we've noticed that much more than 5 minutes, you do become lightheaded or become nauseous feeling. So obviously, there's a concern there. But right now, that's the only alternative we have.
While the source of the methane found in Sherry's water supply is now undisputed, it sometimes is not always as clear. Even today, the source of stray methane found in private water wells is debated, whether it be from natural causes, poor well construction, or hydraulic fracturing itself. We leave Sherry's home and travel to a small community in a neighboring county, where more than a dozen families haven't tasted their water for years. The once little-known city of Dimmock, Pennsylvania, has become the poster child for the national conversation about the source of contaminated water in towns that thrive on natural gas. It's a town of 1,500, marked by its four-corner intersection, local businesses, and patriotic flags. And it's located in Susquehanna County. When we arrive, we meet Ron and Jean Carter. The Carters have lived here so long, their road's named after them.
On behalf of
They're among 11 families in Dimmock who have been fighting a legal battle with the gas company that began drilling here in 2008.
We leased our land in 2006, and they come back in 2007 and said that they were going to start drilling. Well, we thought, oh, well, good.
Ron says he welcomed the new industry into his town.
The area around here is poor. It's a poor area. And we thought, good, that they'll be drilling wells and maybe the people will be getting some royalties.
Royalties for Ron and his family, too. They leased their land for $25 an acre, and the energy company drilled a well just a football field in length away from their front porch. Then, on what the Carters say started out as a routine afternoon, everything changed.
It depends on how much you cook, how much.
I turned the water on to get the water hot, you know, to do a few dishes that I wanted to do by hand. And I noticed that the water had an odor to it. Put a little in a glass and I tasted of it and I thought, uh-oh, we have a problem.
A smell that turned stomachs.
Musty, old, like rotten eggs.
Was just a whiff of things to come.
Our water was always so good, you know, really, real good water. Never had a problem with it. And I was scared. I thought, uh-oh, now what are we going to do?
The Carters say they had their water tested repeatedly by the gas company, the DEP, and independent researchers. In all cases, they were told it was not safe to drink.
They said, we do not want you using that water. You daresn't use that water. We're going to start bringing you water because you have so many bad chemicals in there that it's very dangerous for you to use your water.
Over the next several years, Ron and Jean and many of their neighbors would try to navigate a web of confusion. They'd fight with the gas company they believed impacted their water well. They'd seek out independent researchers and also state and federal officials. Finding answers about the sudden change in their water was as difficult as finding who could provide them. Across the street from Ron and Jean, their son Dusty is also waiting in uncertainty and in dozens of jugs of water that fill his kitchen floor.
When you haul your own water every couple days, you know, gallons of jugs, it gets tiresome, you know. Sometimes you don't want to run uptown. You just want to come home and relax, but you didn't get up there the day before, so you have to go get water.
But for Dusty, the real burden is not knowing what to do next in light of multiple water tests that have plummeted local real estate values and hope.
The place won't sell. Nobody wants to buy it with bad water, you know. So I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. That's why there's a lawsuit, because we're stuck. We don't know what to do. We've been going on, and all it is just another blame game. Oh, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. You know? We had perfectly good water before they showed up.
He's talking about Cabot Oil and Gas. It's a heavyweight in this small town, where the gas company's signs and large-scale community picnics are constant reminders of its influence on the city. The Texas-based company is estimated to be worth almost $16 billion. It directly employs 250 people in Susquehanna County, and it contracts about 500 others in the county who work out in the field. In 2012, it produced 15 of the top 20 Marcellus shale wells in Pennsylvania. The company made headlines back in 2009 when several drinking water wells in Dimmock exploded and others were found with so much gas that at least one homeowner was told to open a window when taking a bath. Pennsylvania's environmental regulator cracked down on Cabot, who to this day insists the methane migration into the water was natural.
When you look at the overall normal levels of methane, they're high to start with. We do not believe that our operations are responsible for the methane that is in the water in Susquehanna County.
The state regulatory agency fined the company for the incidents and barred it from drilling within the community. Cabot agreed to pay for temporary water supplies at some of the affected homes, including the Carter residence, where they installed a whole house water treatment system.
It's a buffalo that I've got out back of my trailer here to replace our well water, and they shut the well right off. And that's what we used for almost 2 years.
But supplying the water doesn't mean the company believes they were at fault.
Now, folks would say, well, why would you do that if you weren't responsible? Number one, it's the right thing to do, and that's why we did it.
A group of residents still involved in the lawsuit refused the company's offers to install a treatment system. In 2011, Cabot informed the DEP that it had met the requirements laid out in their consent order and asked for permission to stop delivering water to the Dimick homes. The state agency approved the request, and Cabot stopped delivering water at the end of 2011.
Now for 2.5 years, we've been living out of gallon jugs and those small water bottles.
At least until the United States Environmental Protection Agency came to town.
Jean, we check and see if that's the water truck.
It's the end of February 2012, and the Carter residence is one of 4 in Dimick receiving daily water deliveries from the federal government. The federal agency is testing the water at more than 60 homes in the area. The EPA's visit follows their review of 2011 data provided by Cabot Oil and Gas to state laboratories, and also follows the concern of some homeowners who think their state agency isn't doing enough to address their water issues.
We're glad that they did. We're glad that EPA stepped in.
It's a move that's happened only a few times before, starting with the agency's multi-million-dollar investigation into water contamination in a central Wyoming natural gas field. A draft report released by the agency in late 2011 sent shock waves through the oil and gas sector. It found that hydraulic fracturing fluids used in shale gas drilling had likely contaminated water in Pavilion, Wyoming. The study contradicted industry claims that fracking has never played a role in contaminating a well, and it drew heated criticism as it awaited a peer review. But it wouldn't make it that far. In June of 2013, the Obama administration abruptly dropped its plans to further investigate its federal findings and handed over its research to the state of Wyoming. The EPA's decision to step in Dimick has also triggered quite the debate, upsetting both Pennsylvania's state agency and Cabot Oil and Gas, which say the case was already closed and handled by the state.
We believe that they had no basis for coming in and retesting the water or providing water.
The company has accused the EPA of selectively choosing data it was concerned about in order to reach a result it had predetermined. The agency declined our multiple requests to discuss their involvement in Dimick, but issued a statement in response to Cabot's claim. We have been clear and forthright about the basis of our actions and acknowledge that uncertainties about the data made available to the agency existed. We acknowledge that the data available to us was incomplete and of uncertain quality, and based on this, determined the need to conduct sampling of wells. Cabot continues to deny all responsibility for the water contamination in the Susquehanna County town. Ron and Jean Carter are breathing a sigh of relief now that they are getting help from the EPA. But for their son, the chaos hasn't ended. He's still drinking from bottles he fills at a local spring and not receiving an alternative water source from the EPA.
They said they got to do years of testing. Well, in years of testing, where am I? Still here now. It's been 2 years that my water's been bad.
Dozens of Dimmick families are anxious for answers and are holding out for a permanent fix as EPA scientists head back to Washington to closely review their collections. We leave Dimmick for a while too, and it would be 5 months before we return to Northeast Pennsylvania to check in with the families and meet a few more. On July 13th, 2012, we're back in Bradford County. The snow has melted, and the once winter-barren trees are full of leaves.
Okay, you ready to go fishing?
Max greets us at his door with a smile from ear to ear. We interrupted an unexpected visit from his point person at the Department of Environmental Protection. She's there when we arrive, and he seems to think that means good news, and maybe even a break in his case.
The last report I got was today from DEP, and there's a few things bad in it, she said, and a few things good. Bacteria counting down some. And
our attempts to meet with a DEP insider to learn about the agency's protocol for responding to water-related claims have been unsuccessful up to this point. So today we try to flag down Max's special guest for some answers. But in this high-stakes deal, Pennsylvania state employees aren't free to talk. The woman declined to speak to us and refused to be on camera. Moments after we arrived, she got in her car and drove away, leading us to another dead end.
we cannot live without water. So
Over the past few months, Max says he's also hit quite a few roadblocks. He's called the gas company and his county commissioners and asked them for help.
They don't do nothing. We don't think you have a case, so they didn't take my water, so they don't know.
But the still hopeful Max is certain that he does. He now has a lawyer who calls him when we're inside.
Mr. Drew, how you doing? Oh, fair. What's the good news? I gotta have some good news here on my well.
Max is about to file a lawsuit, and he also wants Chief Oil and Gas to pay for water filters that he's now changing every other week. The gas company installed a water filtration system after our last visit.
Send them a letter and tell them it's okay if they contact me and try to, get something done with my well. I'm sure they'll do it. Because things looking pretty good for me since DEP was here today.
Since our last time there, Max says his discolored water has gotten worse. He takes us down to his cellar so we can see for ourselves.
Come see how nice my filters is going, catching that dirty water. This is the black stuff coming out of my well, going through this filter. Now, the filtered black was changed 2 weeks ago. Here's the color it's supposed to be. White, like this. Not black like that. Woo! Would you drink water from a black filter like that? No, not me. I'm gonna wait a while and see if it clears up.
Max now uses the filtered water for baths and to wash his hands.
All right.
But he's still receiving water deliveries from the gas company for essentials.
I'm using the water now for showers, which is a big help. I don't have to carry the water in the morning. But I'm awful careful about using any of the water for drinking or cooking. I don't use it for that.
The gas company and the state have tested his well at least 6 times since his water turned black.
Like they say, they don't know what's in that black stuff that's coming in. They don't know what it is.
We asked an independent Pennsylvania geologist to give us some insight into what it might be.
What happens with bacteria is a bacteria will grow in the well and will create these slime coatings. And at some point, the slime coatings will come off. So you'll have intermittent water quality issues.
It's not the only mystery still waiting to be solved. We are still searching for answers about what caused the sudden change in the water color and the elevated levels of the chemicals and bacteria found inside. But what's really a mystery is whether drilling activity is to blame, and more specifically, whether hydraulic fracturing has the potential to contaminate a well. It's a burning question for many. But for Max, all that's important is clean water.
What the heck? Going fishing helped me. Right? Yeah. You let it get you down. Some days it gets you down bad, and you have to think about losing your water. And you had good water right up till they started drilling. Then all of a sudden, your water's gone bad. You really go down in the dumps for a while. You don't know what to do. It's just all you can hope for is they'll try to correct it, or you can get some help from somebody.
The next day, we head back to Dimmock, and it's been just a few months since federal officials were there too. The federal agency previously released test results from the last batch of 60-plus homes and said they did not show levels of contaminants that would give EPA reasons to take further action. It was the fourth release of data since testing began at the start of 2012, but the final report wouldn't come for months. The Environmental Protection Agency promised to conduct a second round of sampling at the Carter's home and the 3 other residences that were receiving temporary water supplies from the agency. That was in May 2012, and it's now July. EPA's official statement about the fourth data set wasn't setting well with some of the Dimmock homeowners, who are angry and now struggling to reconcile the EPA's public account that the water is safe with the results they say they were given in private. Ron and Jean now live in a log cabin, just a few houses down from their old home, which they rented to a relative after we first met them. Within just the last month, they say EPA officials have visited twice. At first, to tell them their water was safe to drink.
Well, the first report, they said that everything was fine, that our water was fine, we could drink our water. They didn't find a problem with our water. I said, really? I said, I said, I can't understand that because our water has always been so bad. I said, and it has a terrible smell to it. And I said, would you like to drink some of our water? You tell me that it's perfectly safe, you would drink it. So he said he would. He would drink the water.
Jean says the official drank a glass of her water, and he returned at the end of June 2012 to deliver results from the second round of sampling on their water well.
He did tell my son that it made him very sick. He had to go to the doctors, and he was on antibiotics for 2 weeks after that. Really sick from it. They took more water tests again. This time they said it was full of manganese, and there was a lot of it.
Manganese is common in hydraulic fracturing fluid, but it's also naturally occurring. It can be found in water near areas where fracking has never happened. It's safe in small doses, but like anything, too much of it can be a concern. Jean says she was told her water had levels 3 times the amount of what the EPA said is safe.
I said, now what? I said, are you going to report that it's bad because you just told me it's bad and I haven't got the water results, test results on paper yet? I said, I want you to make sure everybody knows about this because you've been telling that the water in Dimmock is safe.
Our 5th family also finds it hard to believe that their water isn't harmful.
It was real cloudy and
We meet Julie Sautner at her Carter Road home down the street from Ron and Jean. She has also depended on federally provided water for the past few months.
this is the water buffalo, and this is what we've been living out of for the past 4 years. And before EPA stepped in, Cabot Oil and Gas would come every day and fill this 550-gallon tank up with water.
The Dimmock resident emerged as the unofficial spokesperson for many of her neighbors when she says her water turned bad in 2008.
The color changed, yes. The smell of the water changed. The taste of the water. The appearance.
Her family is one of the 11 families suing Cabot Oil and Gas. And her sign-covered yard has become a national symbol for homeowners who've drawn a link between water quality issues and drilling coming to town.
It wasn't like this before. The water was clear.
In this amateur video shot by a local activist, Julie and her husband Craig sit down with 2 EPA officials and a representative from the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. The officials are at Julie's home to review tests taken from the Sautner's well.
So what this is telling me that this is okay to drink?
This is telling you that our toxicologist reviewed your data specifically. Well, she reviewed everybody's, but this is a memo from her saying that she didn't see any health risks.
I see it says for consumption.
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm allowed to drink this water and it's not going to cause me any harm.
Right.
But for the family who's been warned not to drink water from their kitchen faucet for years, the conversation around their kitchen table is heating up.
Well, that's why we came. We wanted to go over your information.
I just can't believe this. I mean, how do you?
So we're gonna take one test and we're gonna base
everything on that one test.
Everything we've been through.
Well, let me.
I mean, it was Cabot's very own test that sent you guys in here to begin with.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
Because there was, my understanding of the basis that we came in actually had to do with some error in the data. I've looked at all your historical data, all the way back to 2008. And other than some bacteria that seemed to be somewhat persistent early on, we didn't see anything in there that raised any alarms in our eyes. I've seen your water, I've tasted your water actually. And, you know, it didn't taste unusual. Actually, compared to the water I was drinking at the hotel, it didn't have all the chlorine taste.
You're dead serious.
I'm absolutely serious.
I just can't believe you're saying anything like that. I really can't. I know what this water's like.
News that some would say is the end of a long battle. To live in a home with water that's declared safe to drink means little to this Pennsylvania couple, who is still waiting to see results from the EPA's final test.
My neighbors and I still believe that there's still something in the water. There's still something wrong with the water, and I will never feel safe enough to use this water here in this house. I will never.
And for that reason, Julie has started packing when we meet her that July. She's trying to sell their home and will also leave behind a complicated lifestyle that she's had for 4 years.
We couldn't use what we had bought our house for. I want to live in the country like I've always lived in the country. We've always had well water. You never had to worry about water. We didn't have to pay for it, you know. So it was just a pain. Every day we had somebody here testing the water, and I mean every day, whether it be DEP, Cabot, private entities coming and testing the water. It was intrusive, invasive, it was just annoying.
Julie is not the only homeowner who's been overwhelmed by industry, government, and independent investigations.
I just get tired of, bottling water.
We meet our 6th and final homeowner, Ray Kemble, after leaving Julie's home.
It gets to be a pain in the neck.
He tells us that the stress of trying to restore his water supply ended his marriage and has broken up others too.
She just got tired of all the fighting and the arguing going on. Then all the neighbors, were having these meetings, trying to find out what, get more information, what's going on.
He lives just a few minutes away from the Sotner and Carter families in a home that he says he built from the ground up years before the gas industry came to town.
They do not like that billboard there. They hate it.
He's been one of the loudest critics of the energy company since he thinks they're the ones responsible for negatively impacting his well, and he's requested dozens of water tests to prove it.
There's Cabot's cover sheet, lab results, and the chain of custody results from Cabot, showing nothing in my water whatsoever. Here's all the stuff that is now in my water.
Meanwhile, Cabot Oil and Gas is sticking to its position that it had nothing to do with pollution found in any of the Dimmick wells. We had our water expert look at a few of Ray's tests, the first one dating back to 2008. A baseline test conducted by Cabot before drilling began.
What you can notice in them is that before drilling, he had very, very low but detectable levels of a couple of organic compounds, so most notably benzene and toluene, at a couple of parts per billion, so well below the EPA's maximum contaminant limit, and not really very close to the lab's detection limit.
His later tests show elevated levels of methane,
when they did that
although
test.
Close to the limits set by the EPA.
In addition to that, there are some tests that show positive positive hits for other volatile organic compounds, one of the glycols for ethanol, for ethane as well. And that's something that didn't come up in the pre-water testing.
Ray is involved in this same lawsuit against Cabot Oil and Gas that has consumed the lives and wallets of many of his neighbors.
And it's not about the damn money. My point being is, I got your pre-test. In your lease term, I said, you'll put my water back the way it was. I want my water back.
But industry representatives like Tom Shepstone say this whole debate about who's responsible for these water problems is only about the money.
The only people in Dimick saying that are the people who were litigating for money. That's the only people who are saying that. Cabot Oil and Gas has a picnic every year. They have 6,000 people came out last year's picnic. 6,000 local people came out to their picnic.
1,500 live in the town, but 4 times as many attend an industry-sponsored picnic there. Those 6,000 natural gas supporters underscore the gas industry's pull on the region and the thousands that now have jobs because of the industry. The national attention to this small town makes some residents uneasy. We're stopped and questioned frequently by passerbys who see us using our camera. This local business owner approached us wearing a t-shirt that says Dimick Proud. The slogan, where the water is clean and the people are friendly.
There's no issue with the water that hasn't existed before. There might be an issue with truck trafficking, and we're glad to see the trucks because they're fixing the roads, and it's a sign of industry for the city. Everybody here in Dimick that wants a job has a job.
The oil and gas extraction industry now employs more than 190,000 people in the U.S. That's 70,000 more jobs than 10 years ago. At the same time we visit with Ray that July, the Environmental Protection Agency is still delivering water to a few of his neighbors.
Well, this is how you get water in Dimick.
Ray's delivering water to the neighbors who didn't make the federal agency's cut.
That's what I do every morning. Go get water in the morning, run around to all the houses, get back here, I do mine last.
And he says that can lead to tough choices when he needs to preserve the limited water that will fit in his buffalo.
People that you take for granted, I mean, you can't even turn around and turn the water on to make a pot of coffee. Now you gotta watch how you take a shower, do laundry and everything else, because you wanna make sure you don't run the buffalo out because you only got a couple 100 gallons.
Those difficult choices could force him to make another, now that his home has lost most of its value.
I'll leave the house. And I'm to that point right now, I'll walk away from it and let the bank foreclose on the house. Because I'm just to the point I just don't care anymore.
About 10 days after we left Ray and his Dimick neighbors, at the end of July 2012, the EPA announced that it had officially completed its investigation into the once water-troubled town, and it has no plans to return. Their official statement, the sampling and an evaluation of the particular circumstances at each home did not indicate levels of contaminants that would give EPA reason to take further action. The agency also announced its plans to cut off water deliveries to the 4 Dimick homes that required 2 rounds of sampling. In their final report, the EPA told the public they found an elevated level of manganese in one of the 4 wells that served 2 homes in the area. Remember, that's the same elevated substance that the Carters say an EPA official said was in their water during that visit in June. The federal agency would not confirm if they were talking about the same household, but assures that the anonymous 2 homes each have a water system in place that can reduce manganese to levels that are not concerning. The EPA says it also found hazardous substances in the well water at 5 homes at levels that could pose a health risk. Among those, arsenic and barium, both naturally occurring chemicals also found in frac fluid. The agency said each of the residences would get their own treatment systems that can reduce the levels of hazardous substances. The gas industry jumped on the news of what now appeared to be a closed case and applauded the federal regulatory agency despite initial reservations about its decision to step in.
I give the EPA credit for as bad a decision as I think they made going into Dimick. They at least had the intellectual honesty and the scientific rigor to present the correct results at the end and to act appropriately.
It's another win for the natural gas team, and they'll use it to bolster their argument that drilling, specifically fracking, is not to blame. The Environmental Protection Agency is now conducting research that looks into that claim. At the request of Congress, the agency has launched a multi-year federal study to investigate hydraulic fracturing and its potential impact on drinking water resources.
To understand what the potential impacts of hydraulic fracturing on drinking water resources may be, it was really important for us to look at all the places where drinking water resources may interact with or be associated with hydraulic fracturing, not just the specific act of fracturing itself.
Federal researchers are taking several scientific approaches to do that.
First of all, we're doing a comprehensive literature review and coming up with a state-of-the-science synthesis. We asked for data from a variety of sources so that we can look and see what is already known in these areas. We're conducting laboratory research. We're doing field work and case studies. We're doing modeling or scenario evaluation, all as part of our study.
The agency says it plans to submit a draft report at the end of 2014 to the Science Advisory Board for peer review. But the EPA says it will not make recommendations based on its findings.
We'll be generating good scientific information that people can use for making decisions. So local and state policymakers, federal policymakers, local communities, individuals, they'll be able to look and rely on our information to inform their decisions.
More information. It's a need that's critical for the many sides in this debate that believe we don't yet know enough. Scientific research hasn't totally caught up with the most recent technology into the rapidly growing shale gas industry that's now the largest source of growth in U.S. natural gas supply.
It has changed everything. And it's also contributed a lot of questions about hydraulic fracturing and a lot of concerns and issues that have to be addressed.
There may be a lot of unknowns about the impact of the drilling technique, but there are some questions that are being answered. The findings vary with the scientific approach. In February 2012, around the same time we made our first trip to Dimock, a University of Texas study found no link between water pollution and hydraulic fracturing itself.
On the other hand, there are other parts of shale gas development that can lead to fluids getting into groundwater supplies, but not from the hydraulic fracturing itself.
Texas researchers say they came to that conclusion by reviewing scientific literature and previously collected data. Another study, published in a 2012 scientific journal, used a 3D modeling software to conclude that fracking fluids could migrate to aquifers within years after drilling. It's the first peer-reviewed research that evaluates the possibility that fracking could contaminate a water supply. But early results from a landmark federal study on hydraulic fracturing shows no evidence that chemicals from the natural gas drilling process moved up to contaminate aquifers at a Pennsylvania drilling site. A spokesperson for the National Energy Technology Laboratory says those results are far too preliminary to make any firm claims. Duke University researchers have also spent several years investigating this issue. They traveled to our stomping ground in northeastern Pennsylvania to test more than 140 private water wells for themselves. Max, Sherry, and a few of our Dimock homeowners say they were included in the university study, which did not find evidence of fracking chemicals in the water. But the Duke researchers did find evidence of stray gas migration. In fact, there were much higher concentrations of gases like methane, ethane, and propane found in a water supply that was within 1 kilometer of a natural gas well. Lead researcher Robert Jackson says it's not likely that hydraulic fracturing is the biggest threat.
For me, the significance of the findings is first and foremost to worry about good well integrity. This means doing everything we can to protect and safeguard the quality of the drilling and the safeguards that we put into place to isolate the gas from the surrounding environment.
Future drilling construction safeguards can protect the drinking water for millions. But for Sherry, it's too late. We meet her again at her Bradford County home in February 2013. A year has passed since our first visit. She shows us around her property now that her home is up for sale. It's been on the market for more than a year, and no one's biting.
A lot of people, they see the water issues, they see the traffic that comes and goes with the well pad site, and yeah, they say, you know, we wouldn't want to deal with that.
Which means Sherry still has to. It's been more than 5 years now since her water turned bad, and not much has changed. Cloudy gas still fizzes out of a fresh glass of water from her faucet. The water can still ignite. It doesn't freeze, and we still don't know why. We're about to say goodbye to Sherry and check in with the others. But before we do, she shows us a candle. We thought it was just a decoration, but we find out it's a lot more. It's always burning to catch stray methane gas, just in case her open windows don't vent the gas well enough. She's got a lawyer now, but hasn't reached a new agreement with the gas company, which means she hasn't received a water treatment system either.
If Chesapeake could walk in here this evening and tell me they have a guaranteed cure to restore my water to its previous condition, I would probably hug every one of them. But I don't see that happening.
We leave her, helpless, and in a waiting game. We head back to neighboring Susquehanna County for the third and final time in February 2013. But our once outspoken Dimmick families aren't saying much now that they've settled that lawsuit with Cabot Oil and Gas. They reached an agreement just a few months after our last visit, but the exact terms of the settlement are confidential and unknown. The DEP has now lifted the moratorium on the 9 square mile area so Cabot can finish developing well pads in this small bucolic town. Ron and Jean Carter, still living in that log house, have been ordered not to talk. They signed a non-disclosure agreement when they settled with the company. Their son Dusty signed a gag order too. We can't ask questions about his water because he can't answer. And remember the Sautner sign-covered yard? Look at it now. Julie and her husband sold their home in August 2012 to a subsidiary of Cabot Oil and Gas. The once iconic symbol for water problems in the drilling town now sits empty and sends a very different message to those who drive by. 3 of our 4 Dimmick families have been barred from speaking about their water or the events of the past 5 years. But Ray Kemble is still free to talk. He also settled with Cabot, he says, for $70,000, but he's prohibited from mentioning the gas company's name.
Basically what they were doing is, if you don't sign and take this offer, we're going to give you an $80,000 water bill.
We meet Ray at the same home that he threatened to leave just 7 months before. He says even with a now settled lawsuit, life for him is the same.
Same thing. Still got contaminated water. We still have the water truck out here. We still go up to town, get water and bring it down, put it in all the buffaloes.
Things are officially settled in Dimmick, but there is still one loose end untied. Why the EPA ignored a staff member's warning to superiors that the Dimmick wells were polluted with methane and other substances related to the local natural gas production. In July 2013, an internal EPA PowerPoint was leaked to the LA Times. The undated document concludes that the methane and other gases released during drilling apparently caused significant damage to the water quality. The agency confirms that the presentation is authentic and says it's just the independent work of an on-scene coordinator tasked with incident response. An agency spokesperson said in a statement that the presentation's conclusion is a preliminary evaluation that requires additional assessment in order to ascertain its quality and validity. He added that the data and conclusions do not in any way reflect an official agency position. Remember, the agency previously said the water in the small town was safe and it had no plans to return. We asked the EPA about their next step, now that the internal presentation had been made public. We were told that the agency will consider the information in the National Hydraulic Fracturing Study that's underway. Back in Bradford County, where the federal government has never been involved, Max's summer hope has now faded, and it's February 2013. Remember how anxious he was for his filters to work?
I'm going to wait a while and see if it clears up.
Well, it didn't, and he's still changing the filters almost every week.
This filter was only in for a week, The water's fairly clean when it goes through them 2 filters, but it doesn't take out the bacteria. Don't forget that.
He says he's dropped his lawyer after a failed settlement agreement with Chief Oil and Gas. Max says the company offered him $300 to cover a lifetime supply of water filters. But for Max, that wasn't compensation enough.
I'd like to sell the place and get out of here, you know what I mean? But who's going to buy it with bad water?
In May 2013, state officials at the DEP sent Max a letter. It said they had concluded their investigation into his complaint, that gas well drilling activities impacted his well. In the letter, the state agency used very technical language. Its investigations, to date, have not determined that gas well drilling has impacted Max's water supply. But the letter didn't say what did. It recommended that Max disinfect his water because the presence of bacteria could remain. We asked the agency what caused the contamination in Max's drinking water if their investigation did not conclude drilling was to blame. A spokesperson responded in an email statement that a cause could not definitely be determined, which included oil and gas drilling. We asked for specifics about how they came to that conclusion and how they decided when to close Max's case. The state agency says they reached their conclusion through sampling and inspections and decided to close the investigation because no firm conclusion could be made. Now that DEP has ended its inconclusive investigation, Chief Oil and Gas has ended its connection to Max too. He's now cut off from their water deliveries and hauls his own water to bathe. It's been more than a year since our first visit with Max, and now just having clean water is more important than placing the blame. There's no one left looking for answers about the source of that bad water.
I'm not making no headway. I went through a lot with this water. DEP and, you know. So I probably just easy to haul my drinking water and cooking water and try to use the other for what I gotta use it for.
Max is giving up because for him and the others who pause every time they turn on their faucet, the daily stress of seeking help can be more overwhelming than the contaminated water itself. They settle, live on with a basic resource unfit to drink, while millions of us may never have to share that burden. We shower without pause, drink straight from our faucet, use it to cook our favorite meals, and take for granted this life necessity. But this isn't a story about the American majority or the millions of us who might never have those problems. It's a story about 6 Pennsylvania families who do. Their glasses are half empty, and an American water war has only begun.